If you've made it through the entire 11 Keys series, then you've already heard everything that you need to hear to change your life. At this point, the issue is not clarity. It's not even awareness. It's execution with an unlimited timeline. And so everything that we're talking about from here on out is change. I'm talking about actually becoming somebody different than you've been. And what usually happens after a series like this is that people expect this like finish line moment in their life. There's none of that. Life just keeps moving. So the question becomes whether what you've been exposed to actually integrates into how you live, or it's just something that you watch, something that you agreed with, and then just moved on. This video is about that. Once you've seen the patterns in your life, you can't unsee them. Once you take responsibility, once you become more self-aware, once you clean up some of that, internal bullshit, you can't go back to business as usual. You don't get to live on autopilot anymore. You've been exposed to the information. You can, but if you do, there's always going to be a subtle pull in your subconscious that's telling you that you're not living up to your full potential. You'll notice when you're out of alignment. You'll feel it when you avoid shit or you make excuses. And that awareness, it ain't going nowhere. What changes is how people respond to that awareness. Because at first, they're sharp. They course correct really quick when they feel off. They stay conscious and intentional about their life. But knowing what to do is not the same as the behavior being automatic yet. They've noticed it, but they haven't lived it. So when the initial excitement wears off, people stop doing the things that were actually moving them forward. They start thinking about it more than they're acting on it. They tell themselves, I am doing what I said I would. But if you look at their life, they're only doing part of it. They're doing just enough to feel okay, not enough to actually move the needle. Slowly but surely, they stop being as intentional. They stop correcting themselves quickly. They stop following through when it's inconvenient. And the reason this phase feels uncomfortable is because your brain adapts faster than your new life changes. When you first start changing, everything feels new, right? You get some momentum, you get a sense of, I'm finally doing something. But if you keep going, your consistency will kill the novelty before it produces results. So now you're waking up earlier, you're walking, you're more self-aware, and instead of feeling exciting, it just feels normal. And the problem is, we expect progress to feel like progress, but real change usually feels ordinary while it's happening. And later on is when you look around and you realize that everything changed. But this is usually when people start looking for the next idea instead of committing to the one that they're already in, or they just go back to what's familiar. To determine whether this change is going to stick comes down to one thing. Can you keep doing the same thing? Can you keep that same high standard when there's no emotional reward for it? Human nature is to slow down when it gets boring and lock in whenever you feel inspired. But the people who change their lives don't do that. They decide their new standards once, and then they maintain it when the excitement wears off and it gets boring. The shit that changes your life rarely feels urgent in the moment you need to keep doing it. It just feels ordinary. And the ones who win, they don't confuse ordinary with optional. You need to understand something. Change doesn't pay you back immediately. And it doesn't pay everybody back on the same timeline. You can be doing the right things, waking up early, being more intentional with your life, and still see nothing change on the outside for a while. But that doesn't mean that nothing's happening. It means that your external world hasn't caught up with the internal change. But that's the process. Change happens internally first, and then there's a delay, and then it shows up in your life. And when it does, it probably won't be noticeable at first, but you'll see things in hindsight, right? People treat you differently. Opportunities show up, doors open. But this is why time matters. Time is the multiplier here. And yeah, luck plays a small role, but certainly not as big as some people think. Timing isn't even. Opportunity isn't fair sometimes, but luck only matters once you've changed enough to be in position when it shows up. Which brings us back to the real requirement here: patience. I made a whole video about patience right before this one, but I'm not talking about passive patience. I'm talking about the willingness to keep showing up without demanding immediate proof that it's working. Most real change shows up months later as, a different way of reacting or a different way of carrying yourself, whatever. People who rush this phase usually quit and never quite cross over into their new identity that they're trying to form. They're always restarting and never finishing the process. So here's what all this comes down to. You already know what to do. The only question is whether you're willing to keep doing it when there's no excitement, when there's no reassurance, when there's no visible proof that it's working. Because this phase, the phase where nothing seems to be happening, that's the phase that actually determines the outcome. Don't quit because you think you should be feeling something. Change, when you're in it, it's not this massive dopamine release. It's just doing what it takes to become the person that you've decided to be. Now, you do that long enough, and your life is going to reflect what you want. But make no mistake here, that's the price of becoming somebody new, becoming somebody different. Okay? You've now got 13 videos in this series, from intro to the 11 keys to this one. And if you watch them without implementing them, nothing's gonna change. You just entertained yourself. But you have to understand, I didn't create this to inform you. I created this to confront you.